Hey, folks, it's 2 o'clock. And I like to start on time. Just like with music, you got to be on time and be on the beat. So I want to thank you all for coming out. This is a wonderful house. Good problem to have. A capacity overflowing crowd. And on a wonderful occasion, Juneteenth. All right. I'm sure most of you know what the meaning of Juneteenth is. It is the day that the enslaved Africans in the state of Texas finally got the word that the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed. And they got it 2.5 years late.
Wow.
But freedom came, at least. And so before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, the Storytelling Association of California. And their wonderful president of the board, Miss Sarah Armstrong. Wave your hands, Sarah. The association has sponsored 3 Juneteenth programs in California. The first one was in LA on June 7th, and I had the honor of being part of that wonderful show. The second one was on Zoom with the SWAP Storytellers Genre Stories on Wednesday, and we had a wonderful crowd, beautiful storytellers from all over the state. And the good thing about that Zoom was it went far and wide. California, U.S., we even had listeners in India and Ireland. And so we're going to end up with this wonderful program here in Berkeley, California. And I also would like to acknowledge our host, Mr. Ira Marlowe. Ira is the proprietor of the Monkey House, and he also is a great musician and a songwriter. How many of you have been here before? Okay, how many of you have not been here? Do not make it your last time, okay? Please don't. Ira, do we have the video running?
We do. It is running. You see that red light? That'll tell you everything.
Okay, so those of you whose friends and family members couldn't make it, there will be a video recording, an audio video, and you can send it out to those folks, and all of our shows are archived. Okay, without further ado, just a little housekeeping. The bathrooms are in the back. If you have to go, please try to go in between acts. If you have to go during an act, just be very discreet like we used to do in the church and just put your finger up and slowly. Okay, so Freedom Day, Emancipation Day, Jubilee Day, all of those are used to describe June 19th. Now, I had a program in Fairfield where I had to, for the first time, tell stories about Juneteenth to a group of preschoolers. 2 to 5. And I said, okay, what am I going to do for these kids so they can comprehend freedom and slavery and all the ugliness of it, but also the joy and the beauty. And so I came up with a little song. And I live across the street from a elementary school. And my study is in the back, right across from the playground. And it is a beautiful, quiet street. But then I hear the bell ring for recess. And and then the kids pour out, and it is the most joyful sound I've ever heard in my life. And whatever I'm doing, I will put my work down, get off of the computer, get off of the phone, and just listen to the sound of freedom and joy. And so this song is dedicated to all the boys and girls of the future who are going to have to fight real hard to maintain the freedom that we have. And this is called Freedom is a Happy Song. And I want you guys to sing along with me on the chorus and anywhere else you feel like chiming in. We got some great singers in there. Russ Ellis, I want you to sing out loud and clear, brother. Because this brother is another, what's the brother? Bobby McFerrin. Okay. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Freedom is walking where I please, dancing in the sunlight, feeling the breeze. Freedom is singing loud and strong, everybody joining in the freedom song. Oh, freedom, freedom, let it ring. Freedom is a song we sing. We love and hope we clap along. Feeling proud, feeling strong. Freedom mean I can learn and play. Dream big dreams every day. Hold a hand, help a friend. Freedom means the dog won't end. Oh, freedom, freedom, let it ring. Freedom is a song we sing. With love and hope we clap along. Feeling proud and feeling strong. Some had to march, some had to fight to make sure we got all our equal rights. Now we remember, we stand and say, thank you for our Freedom Day. Oh, freedom, freedom, let it ring. Freedom is a song we sing. With open hearts we sing along. Freedom makes us all strong. Whoa! Let freedom ring. Now, song has always played a very important role in the struggle for African enslaved people throughout the 246 years that they were enslaved. It gave them the endurance, gave them the resilience, gave them the hope to keep on keeping on and making a way out of way. Y'all remember them old songs? Yeah. Swing low, sweet chariot. Oh, freedom, move, freedom, I fly away. Oh, glory, I fly away. All of those songs, all the way up through the civil rights movement. We shall overcome. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Those were songs that were nurturing our people and got them through the day. But there was also the drum. And I'm gonna turn it over to my Brody here, and he's gonna tell you a little something about the drums.
Okay, I'm White Tucker, brother of Brother Ben Tucker. I was born and raised in San Francisco, California. Silver Terrace, Baker District. I was first introduced to the drum by a friend of mine about 15 or 16, Paul Roberts. Paul and I played on the weekends. Thank you, sir. But the best conga players in the 60s lived in Fillmore. Paul learned from Michael Banks. And every Saturday, on some Sundays, we would meet in Golden Gate Park, across from Kezar Stadium. Now, if you jaywalked across Lincoln Avenue, you ran into some stairs that zigzagged down into the park. There you found a carousel, a merry-go-round, swings and slides for kids. And back of that was a long meadow, stretching from east to west, or Beta Breakers as we called it in San Francisco. And the back of that long meadow was a hill that arched 30 degrees up the way. And on that hill sat or congregated a bunch of hippies. It was known as Hippie Hill. And we would play there every Saturday and some Sundays. Let me see if I could conjure up.
Remember Hippie Hill? They had a brother there. His name was Big Black. Can you guys remember Big Black? He would play. He played with Hugh Masekela, and he was the king of the Congos. So, this is my brother, Dwight Tucker. He is, in addition to being a conguero, he is also a horticulturalist. He is a plant specialist, and that comes from our Louisiana roots. We are people of the soil. And when we were kids, we used to have to till the soil for my father, and we hated it. Spreading fertilizer, cultivating earthworms. My father would bury fish heads in the soil. So this is good stuff, boy. The Native Americans, the Indians use this stuff here. And sure enough, he grew the best vegetables and collard greens and okra and all that good stuff. And the thing is, as much as we dislike that work, we'll all have our fingers and our hands in the soil.
Yes.
And so, beg your pardon?
I love that.
You loved it. You didn't act like it when you were young. Save that for the audience. Oh, right. Now, that same beat that you had, why don't you hit that? And this is something I came up with, my brother and I were, to talk about the significance of the drum in the African American community and how it was taken from our people before they left Africa because they didn't want them to have the drum, because the enslavers knew the power of the drum. change. Before ships, before cotton fields and auction blocks, there was the drum. Not just sound, not a voice, not just a rhythm, but a language. In Mother Africa, the drums spoke in tongues. They spoke in language that the trees understood. The drum called the people to gather, called the people to dance, to weep, to praise. It told the story of the elders. It named the children, guided the warriors. It was ceremony. It was celebration. It was sacred. But then, there's always a then in a story. But then came the ships, still in their bellies. They took the people, but they could not take the beat. Oh, they tried. They banned the drum. They feared it. Why? Because it united the people, made them remember. And we did remember. And you know what the people did? They made drums out of barrels, made rhythm with their feet and their palms. They patted the juba and stomped the shoe in the soil. Clap for freedom. Clap for hope. Shout for God. And through the cotton fields and the canebrakes, through sorrow songs and midnight trains, the drums beat on. And then came Galveston, June 1985. 2 years late, but freedom came. And when it did, oh, the people danced, oh, the people cried. And the drums, yes, the drums, they roared. Boom, like a battle cry. Boom, like a baby's been born. Boom, like ancestors rising up from the dirt, shouting, shouting, we still here. Today, when you hear the drum at a protest, in a jazz club, in church on Sunday morning, on a street corner, in the hood, it's more than music. It's a survival code. Our warriors whisper, a testimony in rhythm. It is the sound of black joy, of black pain, of black resistance, of black resurrection. The drum beat did not die in the ocean. It did not die on the plantation. It did not die when they tried to silence us. Because the drum is the heart of the people.
Yeah.
The heart of humanity. Boom, boom. We still here. We still here, y'all. And don't be here. Just keep the beat in your heart, because your heartbeat is a drum too. Every beat of your heart is beating out a rhythm and bringing out a story to be told. And keep those songs near and dear, and keep this little sheet music and share it with your kids and your grandkids, and if you go to schools, so they can get this freedom idea in their head. And so we're going to wrap it up here with a little poem I put together for the dear people of Galveston, Texas. We didn't do anything on the drum beat, but if you can do a little something, that's fine. If you can't, that's cool too. All right. This is called Galveston Waited. In Galveston's heat, under the vast and wide, the wind whispered truth that the law tried to hide. Freedom had called, yet chains still remain, while 2 winters and summers passed on in pain. The proclamation rang loud in D.C., but cotton still bled under sun and decree. 2 years and more they toiled and dreamed, while justice was late and silence screamed. But oh, the strength, it would not yield, planted like roots in the blood-soaked fields. They sang in the dust, they prayed through the night, their backs bent in sorrow, but their souls were burning bright. They wept for the stolen, they danced for the living. Their hands bore the scars, yet they kept on giving. Their hearts held the song of ancestral flame, each note a reminder that they all had a name. Now, when freedom rolled on that June day's tide, with General Granger and truth at his side, no trumpet was sounded, no riches bestowed, just the end of a lie and the lifting of a load. Still they rose, not broken, but whole, with laughter and tears, reclaiming their soul. They built from the ashes, they planted, they taught, with love in their labor and peace dearly bought. She remembered them now, the ones who endured, who waited for liberty, silent but sure. They turned chains into songs, fields into hymns, Their glory still dances in the Juneteenth winds. Not just survivors, but fierce and free. The heart of resilience, the soul of the sea. They bore the delay with unshaken grace. They rose up in joy, the pride of the race. Thank you, Brother Dwight. All right. Now that we got the show on the road, we are going to have our first storyteller, musician, actor, a proud father of two wonderful sons. I think, where's Kirk? It's two or one into the acting. Kirk, are you around? You're up next, man. Where are you?
Here I am.
Oh, okay. You have two sons into acting or one?
Two sons, one into acting.
Okay, one in acting. Now, this man is about to come up here, Kirk. He was the one of my first storytelling teachers. And he taught me an awful lot about the art of storytelling, and because of him, I'm up here on the stage now.
Yeah.
He was a long-time storyteller with Stage Bridge. He also started a program called Epic, which got a lot of us involved, Eleanor here and Lois and a couple of other people. And now we're producing and performing stories, so he's a master teacher as well. Come on up, Brother Kirk. He had surgery last 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Let's give a big hand to the wonderful Tucker brothers. Thank you, Brother Dan. Now, I play around on the drum, but this man plays the drum. I love those drums. I want to share a few stories with you. I'm going to share one now and then one a little bit later. But I gotta say this because I'm so glad we're doing this Juneteenth celebration, because we're in a time that they're trying to silence our stories and say they do not matter. Even on Juneteenth itself, our illustrious president, I say that in quotation marks with plenty of sarcasm, but our president said that we have too many holidays. We need to go back to work. And I say we need to tell the stories. Yes. Because if we do not tell the stories, they will be forgotten. And the next generation and the generations after that will wonder where we came from and why we are here, and they'll be even more lost than some of them are today. We must tell the stories. The storyteller told me once, Ben Haggerty, he was actually a European storyteller. He was at one of our festivals, and he said, he kind of gave me a charge. He said, you must tell the old stories. Because if we don't tell the old stories, no one will know. They will be forgotten and they will be lost. And that is something that I am afraid of. So because of that, I love telling personal stories and all kinds of different ones, but I love telling the old stories. And so with that in mind, I'm going to start off with this very old story. We're talking like 13th century. So we're talking about hundreds of years old, almost 1,000. Let me grab my things here so they could help me tell the story. So let me tell you a little bit about this instrument here. It's called an ingoni. It's an old West African instrument, the instrument of the griots, those keepers of the culture that tell so much more than stories, but the history, the religion, the science, everything about their culture, and it's all the oral tradition. It's in their head, and they pass it on from generation to generation. And this is one such instrument that a griot would use to help tell his stories. So I'm going to use it to help me tell mine. But as you all know that have been involved in storytelling, that storytelling is so much more than one person telling a story. It is a community event. I can't tell the story without you. So this is what I need you to do. And call and response is embedded in the DNA of storytelling. So I say, a story, and you say, tell me a story. All right? A story. Tell me a story. A story. Tell me a story. All right, I will. So we'll begin like this. As we begin, I say, not in my time, and not in your time. And I need you to say, but in the old time, when the earth and sea were new. So your part is in the old time, when the earth and sea were new. Here we go. Let's put it together. Not in my time, and not in your time.
But in the old time, when the earth and sea were new.
In old Mali. Those griots, those keepers of the culture, they tell the tale of one Sundiata, the lion prince of Mali. And they cannot tell his tale without beginning with his father, the king, Konote, who ruled old Mali with his wife, the beautiful but cunning Futimata. And they had just had a baby boy. His name, Dunkaran Tuman. And so would Mali's fate lie in the hands of this baby boy who would grow up and be the king. Because of his birth, celebrations were going on all over. People would come from far and wide to bring gifts and sing praises and give words of prophecy. And that is where our story begins. There were two brothers that had presented themselves before the king. Dwight and Ben Tucker. No, I'm just kidding. I couldn't let that go. There were two brothers that presented themselves before the king. The oldest name was Olamba, and the youngest was Olani. And standing between them was this young woman. Now you would think in a story like this of royalty and destiny that I would say there was a beautiful young woman with them, but she was not. She was what by some standards would call an ugly woman, even a hideous woman. Her eyes were large, her face was misshapen, she had a hump on her back, which caused her to bend over. And the people in the court wondered why this ugly girl was standing between these two hunters. But the oldest spoke. He said, "We bring you greetings from the land of Do. For in our land there was this mighty water buffalo. His horns were swooping, sharp, like the spears of a hunter. He had a hump, large and intimidating, on his back. He had a golden tail that glistened in the sun. And this beast would destroy everything in his path. Villages, entire crops. It would kill children, women, men, hunters, warriors alike. It could not be stopped. And so the king put out a declaration. If any man is able to slay this beast and bring peace to the land of Do, to him I will give the riches of the land and his choice of any of the beautiful women of the court. And so it was, O king, continued the oldest brother. My brother and I decided that we would kill this beast or we would die trying. And so we set out. For 3 days we hunted. We looked where they said the beast would dwell, but we could not find it anywhere. And it was on the third day that we did not find the beast, but we found this very old waif of a woman. She was thin. Her clothes just seemed to hang on her body. And she was by the river, a tree supporting her, and she was standing there, her head down, weeping. It could not be stopped and she could not be controlled. We went to her as we would our own grandmother or mother, and we said, "Woman, why do you weep?" But she just continued to cry. Eventually she sat down with us, still crying, and what seemed like the whole afternoon had passed. Finally she looked up through a tear-stained face and she said, "I know why you have come. And indeed you will slay this beast. if you do exactly as I tell you. But when the beast is dead, you must cut off his tail, present it to the king as proof. But when the king offers you the beautiful women of the land, you must not choose any of them. No, no. There's one they call Sokolon. She is not the most beautiful woman, but within her will place the spirit and strength of the buffalo. You must choose her. And she went on to give us instructions of how we must kill this beast. And finally, at the end of this long day, I said, "Who are you?" And for the first time she stood, and this weak, thin woman said, "I am the buffalo of Do. I have been cursed with a curse, and I am transformed into this beast, and I must kill what is before me. So you will bring peace to the land of Do, and peace to this old soul." And with that, we took leave of the woman. The very next morning, just as the sun was rising in the east, the silhouette of this water buffalo we saw in the distance, and the moment that buffalo saw us, it began charging. And the distance began to shrink between us. But we remember the words that the woman had given us the day before. She said, "When the beast comes at you, you must not move. You must stand fast. Wait, and then, and only then, when the beast is upon you, you must strike." And my spear went right deep into the heart of the beast, and my brother's spear struck right between its eyes. The beast crumbled and fell to the earth, his blood pouring out before it. We cut off the tail as the woman had instructed us. We presented to the king, and as you can imagine, there was a great cry of freedom in all of the village, O king. And he did give us the riches of the dough, and he did have us to look at all the women of the court and present us with any one of our choosing. But we looked past them, and there was this one, just a common girl, standing in the back. And she was not the prettiest to look upon, but we knew that was who the old woman spoke of. For you could almost see the spirit of the buffalo in her eyes through her strength. And we chose her. And so, king, that is what brings us before you. We felt that we were urged to present her to you as a gift. And you could imagine there was this collective gasp that went up into the air. The people in the court were offended. How dare these proud people of Mali look upon these strangers presenting this gift? The guard standing next to the king gripped his spear extra tightly, waiting for the command of the king so he could plunge his spear deep into the heart of this man who offended them. But it was the king himself who held up his hand, and he silenced the crowd. For he remembered that not too many months before this, an old man, a hunter, prophet, had came before the king. O king, the ancestors of the past have allowed me to look into the future. Your future, O king. And I have seen that if you will marry an ugly woman, that out of your loins the greatest king that Mali has ever known will come forth. And so the king remembered these words as they came before him with this young woman standing before him, and to the surprise of everyone, he welcomed her into the court. So there was great rejoicing in Mali. Everyone was excited. Well, okay, not everyone was excited. There was one, Futimata, the wife of the king, who was not excited at all. How dare this hideous woman come into my home and dare try to say that my child should not be king? I, and I alone, will see my son grow up and rise to be the king of Mali. But seemed like it was not to be so. For King Konate, he welcomed Sogolon and he accepted her to be his second wife. But there was something that happened that he will never forget. That very night, the night of the wedding, when the king tried to go into her, tried to lie with her, it was as if horns, like spears, like buffalo horns all over her body began to come out, and he could not touch her. Her strength, her resolve was mighty. He even got the magicians of the land to cast a spell, but there was nothing that they could do. It was only after he'd grown exhausted and she was exhausted herself and fell asleep that he put a knife to her neck. And he told her that if you will not succumb, then you will be sacrificed and you will die. And it's only then that she relented. And she allowed the king to be with her. And 9 months from that time, they had a son. A baby whose name was Sundiata. Sundiata, which means Lion Prince or Sogolon's Prince. Now everyone looked at him and thought, could this possibly be the fulfillment of prophecy? Everyone but Futimata and her group. Well, they mocked him every chance they got. And even when the boy began to grow, something happened where he should have been toddling and pulling up and walking, but he could not move. His legs were weak, and he had to drag himself around on the ground of Mali. And Futimata said, "Ha! How could he possibly be the king when he cannot even walk to the throne? This child shall rule you." But Konate, the king, he thought him as a son of royalty and treated him as he should have. And one day, he presented him with the gift of a griot. Everyone say, griot. Griot. This keeper of the culture, he would teach Sundiata the ways of the Malinke people. He would teach him the songs, the religion, the culture, the history. But in time, he also became his confidant and closest friend. With his father busy in the affairs of the state, he was like another father to him. And when Sundiata was 6 years old, the griot, Bala Fasale, gave him the gift of an iron rod. And he hoped this iron rod would allow him to navigate and pull himself around on the floors, on the grounds of Mali a little bit easier and ease his pain. But when Sundiata saw that iron rod, something happened, something snapped in his soul. He looked at that iron rod and he looked at his mother who was standing across the court and he said, "I will walk this day." And he pulls himself up on that iron rod. And for the very first time in his life, he stood. And he used that iron rod and step by step, he walked across the court to the open arms of his mother, Sogolon. And in time, as the days turned into weeks, he put that iron rod down and began to walk on his own. And soon that boy who was growing into a man began to run and hunt and become a warrior and prince, and word began to spread. But as time and destiny would have it, Konate did not see any prophecy be fulfilled. For he closed his eyes, the king, and he went to be with his ancestors. And he was no more. And when the time of grieving was done for King Konate, the elders of the village did not honor his wishes, and they made his son, Dungaran Taman, the rightful heir of the throne. They made him to be the king. Now, he was just a boy himself, a young teen, and so it was not he that really ruled, but it was Futimata, the queen mother who whispered the things in his ear, and he was really just her puppet. And when Sundiata was 13 years old, something happened that changed the course of Mali forever. Remember the griot, Bala Fasale?
Yes.
Well, there was a time that that the people of Mali were in war or they were in confrontation. They were threatened by a sorcerer king. His name was Sa'amaro. And the reason why they called him the sorcerer king, because when he entered the village, he wore a coat made of human skin. He wore shoes made of human skin. And he wore a hat fashioned with human hair and human skin. He wore the skulls of the 10 kings around his neck. And everyone is afraid of Sa'amaro, the sorcerer king. And so they sent Bala Fasale away to the land of Soso to be an ambassador, to broker peace between the two nations, so Sa'amaro would not invade Old Mali. But they could have chose any griot. The king could have chose his very own, but he chose the griot of Sundiata. So when he returned, he was beside himself. He was irate. No. Why did they send my griot away? Why did he not send his own? And so he went and he confronted the king, but his mother, Sogolon, stopped him. He said, he is still the king. He is not my king. He may be king of the Mansa, but he is not my king. And so they knew that this act was just one step away from killing Sundiata and his mother. So with this, it sent him into exile. So Sundiata and his mother, and by this time, the little ones that had come after him, they left the land of Old Mali. And they went into exile. For fear that the soldiers would kill them, they went from land to land looking for sanctuary. Some welcomed them with open arms and treated them as the royalty that they were, and some rejected them for fear of Futimatan, Dukarantaman, and the soldiers of Mali. Eventually, after 7 years of exile, he ended up in a faraway land, in the land of Mema. And the king loved Sundiata. He treated him as he would his own son, which he did not have one. But he treated him as a son that he hoped one day would rule in his stead. He taught him the administration of how to rule and how to negotiate and how to be a king and how to be a mighty warrior. And Sundiata grew not only in physical stature, but in wisdom and strength and skill. Meanwhile, back in Old Mali, word had it that Sa'amaro eventually invaded them after all. We never heard from Dugard and Tuman and Futimata again. The soldiers were scattered. The people of Mali ran for their lives. And eventually the word reached back to Sundiata that Old Mali had fallen. Sundiata went to the king of Mema and he begged him for permission to leave. The king said, before you do anything, you must go see your mother, for she is not well. And we went into the tent of Sobalon, the buffalo woman of Do. Her eyes were weak, and it looked like she was on her last breath. She looked up into the eyes of her son, Sundiata. The time has come. You must return to Old Mali, my son, and make things right. Fulfill the prophecy and take your place as the rightful king. And with that, she closed her eyes for the very last time. And the buffalo woman of Dawn, the woman of strength and might and destiny, was no more. And when the time of grieving was over for the buffalo woman of Do, the king indeed granted Sundiata permission to leave, but not only that, he gave him half of his army, soldiers, warriors, weapons, to return back to old Mali. And on the way, all those kingdoms and places that had welcomed Sundiata and become his friends and allies, they sent warriors and horses and weapons, and his army began to grow. Word had got back to Sa'amuro, the sorcerer king, that there would be a great battle between the two forces right there in the valley of Krina. Now, in the meantime, Balafasale had finally escaped the grips of Sa'amuro, the sorcerer king, and he had found Sundiata the night before the battle was to take place. It was a wonderful reunion, but it was short-lived. He told him, I have been in the inner chambers of Sa'amuro, the sorcerer king, and I have found his one weakness. If he is struck with the spur of a white rooster, then and only then his powers will be weakened and he can be destroyed. And he presented Sundiata with the spur of a white rooster attached to an arrow. And so the next day, the battle was to take place. Now this is where I need you, my warriors. I'm going to play a rhythm, and at the end of the rhythm, we're going to say, I am, and it's going to be a war cry that'll reach up to the heavens, and the ancestors will help them. So it's like this. I am, like that. Are you ready, warriors?
Yeah.
Wait. Are you ready, warriors?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. And so the battle began to take place. The forces of Sundiata against the forces of Sa'amuro, the sorcerer king. And when they met, it was a great clashing in the battle, and it seemed as if Sa'amuro and his men were forcing Sundiata back. But then something rose up within Sundiata, a feeling of power and destiny, the spirit of the lion and the spirit of the buffalo, and they began to push his forces back. And when Sa'amuro felt it looked like he was going to be defeated, he ran. And it was then Sundiata took advantage of that moment, and he pulled out the spur of the white rooster, and it struck the shoulder of Sa'amuro, and he crumpled to the ground. He crawled, he scrambled to this nearby cave. He went in one way, but Sundiata, he pursued him with some of his men. On the other side, Balafasale, he and some other men went to the other side of the cave, and they surrounded him. But when they got to the middle, Sa'amuro, the sorcerer king, was gone. Some griots believe that he used his last bit of magic to turn into stone, so Sundiata could not keep him and catch him alive. What happened to Sa'amuro, we do not know. But what happened to Sundiata, the lion prince of Mali, we do know. For he did indeed take his place on the lion's skin of the throne, and all those kingdoms that were friendly, that were allies, he gathered them together and united them, and they became the Empire of Mali. Sundiata ruled for 30 years, and their kingdoms grew in strength and wealth and power. And as the prophecy foretold, he did indeed become the greatest king that Mali had ever known. Thank you. Can I just say one thing real quick before Brother Ben comes back up? I have to say, how many have never heard that story before today? Okay, quite a few of you. But you have heard that story before today. No. You have? Okay, work with me. A little young prince, exiled away, goes far, gets his friends, they come back, take his rightful place on the lion's skin of the throne of Mali. Hello, it is? It is the Lion King. One thing about telling our stories, Disney says that was their first original tale. Come on. All right, so I just have to tell you the real story of the Lion King. Thank you.
Master storyteller indeed, and Kurt is going to be coming back and finishing out our storyteller event today. So, our next teller is Lois Kinsey. Take your time. One step at a time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, while Lois is getting situated there, let me tell you something about Lois. First and foremost, Lois is from my neighborhood. Bayview, Hunters Point. This is where the Tucker family grew up. And we got to know each other at Stagebridge. She was a student, I was a student. We were also in the great Epic program together. And Lois is a wonderful storyteller. She tells personal stories, she tells legends, and she tells fairy tales, and what else?
Real story.
What?
Real story.
Real personal stories as well. And let me tell you something else about Lois. As dignified as she looks up there, she was also a clown. A storytelling clown. Take it away, Lois.
All right.
My name is Lucy Ann, and I am a free slave. And I want to thank y'all for inviting me here today to tell my story of how I experienced that day when I found out that I was no longer a slave, that I was free. We were living on Master No Heart's plantation, and we called him that because he didn't have a heart.
All right.
No heart.
So, that morning was like a normal day. You wake up and you do what you got to do. And so what we had to do, we heard the overseer's bell to let us know it was time to get up, get to work. So Mother and I had eaten our meal, and we had prayed for our day. And she walked over to the house because she was a seamstress. She made all the masters and the missus' clothes. I watched as she walked away, and I turned to the field. But I remember the time when we could walk together because I worked in the house too. I was her assistant. Oh, but there came a day when the master said something I just could not reply to. And I was quickly banished to the field. But anyway, today was my turn to pull weeds from the cotton plant. So I got there and I got down on my knees and I was pulling the plants, and you have to sing to yourself or talk to yourself or something in order to do that day. Because that's some hard work, and you're in the sun, and it wasn't so much the environment, but it was the people, that oversee you. He used to say some horrible things. It was so unnecessary. We're working hard as we can, and he gonna tell us to work harder or get mad because he don't seem to think that we're working hard as we can. But I sang my song. I get on with it. We can do this today. Get on with it. We can do this today. That it was that thing that you have to tell yourself to keep on keeping on. Yeah. The things that you got to make do. You got to make do. Yeah. But in the midst, I heard a bell. Ding, ding. And see, that was the bell from the master, he said. That meant he had something to tell us. And if you were late, the punishment, I have to say this. He was really called him heartless because there was no punishment that was too bad. Just an example. There was one of us was running to be there on time. Was late. They strung him up and whipped his feet and told him, don't be late again. Now you can imagine the difficulty he had of being on time. So when you think about that, and that's the least of what we experienced in those times, because he really had no, we use the word now, boundary. He had no boundary. But anyway, I dropped everything I had and I got there on time. But we got there and he wasn't standing on this usual place on top of the veranda, the top of the stairs, And I looked for my mother and she came over and she took my hand and he stood real together. She held me real tight, both of us praying it wasn't going to be us, because see, these were the times he'd get us all together because he was going to punish somebody. So we stood there and we praying that it's not us. And he comes out, followed by his missus. And she takes her place, very, very friendly. But he's followed by a couple of Union soldiers. So we kind of wondering, like, what is this going to be? And again, we held on tighter again, because we didn't know what was happening. And the massa, he stepped up to it, he kind of pulled himself up tight, that when you're going to be self-important, and actually he was a very short man. So he stood up and he took his time and he looked at each one of us, making eye contact. And so it was like he wanted us to implant his face in our memory forever. He said, I've been told that I can't own you no more, that I got to set you free. He said, and he looked at us again, slowly. Consider yourself freed. Turned around and walked back into the house, followed by the missus. And if you hear something like that and you don't know what's really going on, you kind of look at everybody and say, well, what's happening, and so forth. And you say, well, what does that mean? Does it really mean that we free? And the soldier stepped up. He says, yes, believe it. Because the president has signed a law that says no man can own another man. So you are no longer owned. You're freed. Now, I myself took that moment to really get to the place of I understood what that meant, because there was a lot of meanings you could have to that, And I watched everybody else, and some was laughing and jumping and singing, and some was praying, and some was railing and angry, and some was just crying. Some was just sitting still. I mean, to hear that you have your freedom after all the time that you have wished for this wish. Now, I said to myself, now, this is really strange, because one minute I am, and the next minute I ain't. And I look back on what a slave was, the freedom, lack of freedom, excuse me. The lack of freedom to say the simple no. The simple ask for something. You didn't have that right. So all of a sudden, I'm freed. Does that mean I have the right to say no? Do I have the right to ask for what I need? And as everybody else was doing their expression of whatever they felt to do, to react to that day, I just said quietly, just trying to figure that out. How do you go from slave one minute to unslave the next minute, and what does that actually mean? So, that evening when we went back to the slave quarters, we built us a big fire and everybody sit around. And the first thing we did, was to pray. And you know what we prayed for? That we were still alive. still alive to say, yes, I'm free. I have a choice. Which that end up what that really means. I have a choice. I can say no, I can say yes. And as we talked about it, we talked and said, what is freedom? What is going to be? And so what we did, we looked at Master, and we looked at what he could, and what he could do that we couldn't. Okay, so one thing, he could come and go as he pleased. One other thing was that he could own stuff, and nobody could take it from him. But the real thing was, he could say no. That was the difference. And as we talked, each of us had some kind of idea what freedom meant to them. And Henry, he said, freedom to me would be to own my own land and build my own house. See, he was a bricklayer and a carpenter. So you can imagine the feeling of standing on his own land and living in his own house that he built with his hands meant to him. And nobody could take it from him. And out of me, I had to laugh at her, but she said, you know what freedom means to me? That I can take me a hot tub with lots of bubble and soap and all the hot water I want. Now that would be freedom to me. And I understood, that freedom means you could be treated with something special just because who you is, But as I sat and I listened, I recognized what I really felt freedom would be for me. And freedom to me would be just to feel safe. Because I had never known, as a slave, I never known a day when I wasn't afraid for my life. Because, hey, depending on the mood of the master, it depended on how you were treated. And I had seen so many of my brothers and sisters and friends go that way. So after the fire went out and we went into our homes, and Mother and I sat together and we talked. We talked about how our lives had been. Of course, we brought all the horror and the misery and all of that too, because you got to talk about that. If you don't talk about that, it carries it with you, So, but what really I remember, that we talked about the time my daddy was there with us. And the times we could feel like a family and spend time together laughing and being together. So, it's like, in that moment, I look back on it and I realize, as I lived on, of course, that was a time when I had to see both. I had to see a balance. I had to see something that's worthwhile that I gained while I was doing that horrible life. And that was a moment of family. And so, in that moment, we decided that that's what we were going to do. We're going to be a family again. Went to sleep. Next morning, I laugh at it now. I woke up in a panic. Like the day was on and the sun was shining and I was late for the field. I could just see my mind was telling me all the punishments that I could face. And my mother looked at me, she said, where you going? Because I got dressed and everything. She said, where you going? I looked at her and then it hit me. I remembered yesterday. And I sat down. And I have to confess, I just cried. It's like once you recognize what it means, what it actually means to be a slave, and then move into the dream of what freedom is. It took me, I won't say it take for everybody, but it took me a minute, when I cried. And my mother heard me crying and she came in and she cried with me and we cried together. Joyful together, and we did all the things, emotions that ever came up, we did it together. And all of a sudden we had ding ding. Oh, there's that bell again. The master's got something to tell us. So my mother looked at me, and I looked at her. She said, do you want to go? And I said, why not? Let's go hear what he got to say for the last time. And when I look back on that, that was our first choice that we made. You know? So we went, and this time the master was standing there. And he had his punishment face on. Ooh, he had his punishment face on. And it was one that I had never seen before. So we held our hands together and we said, well, what's going to happen now? You know. And he said again, he looked at us. But you know, in his eyes, I could see something different. I couldn't tell at the time. But he looked at each of us as if to implant our faces in his memory. But when I look back on the time, he was a broken man because it's in his eyes. You know, sometimes when I remember some of our family and friends, when they would be broken, trying to be broken, or had to go through that stuff that was going to break them down, there was a look in their eyes. And I look back and that man had the look in his eyes. I say now to myself, he had the experience of being a slave. He couldn't say no. So he stood up there in his usual way and he said, yesterday I had no choice. I had to make and set you free. Told me I couldn't own you no more. Let me tell you something. Because I have owned you, you will always be my slave. And then he turned, before he turned and walked away, I forgot he made an offer. He said, those of you who want to stay, I will pay for your labor, and you can keep still living in that house you have. And any of you that want to leave, you can leave. Don't ever come back. My mother and I looked as if we would. You know? So he looked at us again. I mean, really. He shook his hand and he turned around and he went back into the house. This is fun. And my mother and I just looked at each other and said, why would we want to stay here if you're going to see us as a slave forever? So we went on back home, packed up our stuff. My mother said she worked in the house. She sort of snuck a little food outside, packed it up too. And we said goodbye to all our friends and so forth. And we started on out toward the gate. You know, and as we walked our way into freedom, I couldn't leave without, not leave. I couldn't get off my mind what he said to us. You will always be my slave. So, you know, that back of my mind, I just didn't understand what freedom was going to be like. But we walked to the gate. And we turned and looked back at the house, the big white house, with his big veranda and that special spot, and the courtyard where we all felt punishment. Said a prayer, turned and walked away from it all, because we were on our way to be a family in freedom.
Thank God Almighty, Lois is free. Right. Okay, our next storyteller is Camille Miller. Now, Camille has been very busy on the Juneteenth circuit. She was in Santa Rosa yesterday telling at the Bay Area Storytellers Festival. She was with us on the Zoom on Wednesday night for Juneteenth, and she's here with us today as well. Now, Camille is a poet. She is a storyteller, and in her words, a wannabe comedian.
Harriet Tubman said, "I grew up like a neglected weed, having not known liberty. Yet she left the seeds of freedom trees and outlined the tracks of the Underground Railroad. A people bought, a people sold. Dark shadows escaping in the night, dark dreams of life outside the cotton field. They were the forerunners of freedom, hope for our future generations. And now we are those trees birthed from the womb of the Underground Railroad with roots that intertwine one another. They go down deep and spread out wide and dance to the rhythm of our elders and our ancestors, nurtured by the DNA of resilience. And in our blood is the song of we shall overcome, and we are still overcoming. From the cotton fields of Galveston, Texas to the Golden Gate Bridge, we are bridge builders. Reaching back and bringing forward the history of our people, building brick upon brick upon brick, so that our children and our children's children can take a seat at the table of liberty. There was a proclamation of 1863, but we are living in the June 19th of 1865, the final freedom bell. And like a message in the mouth of a three-legged dog, freedom had to limp its way to its lit destination. But the message was delivered, and we have been delivered. And now it's our turn to stand shoulder to shoulder, chest out, head up, waving the flag of justice. And now it's our time to reverse the curse and break the lies of slavery, digging and redigging those wells of beauty and royalty. Each one becoming the medicine for the pain of our people, knowing that we are only as strong as our weakest link. And now it's our responsibility to be those trees and plant those seeds of freedom. You know, they say that trauma comes down in your blood through the DNA. And if that's true, then healing does too. So how do we get rid of trauma? Pray it out, sing it out, paint it out, work it out, and we speak it out. And when we as a people become whole, we're not only healing our past generations, but we're healing our generations in the future. Now, let me tell you a little something about my family. My great-grandmother Charlotte lived a long, long time ago. And her story was passed down to me through my generations. She lived in a world that denied her of her name, her dignity, and even her humanity. And this is her story of freedom. Now, Charlotte was about 5'1", just a little bit shorter than me because I'm 5'2". She had chocolate brown skin, eyes the size of buttons, and full lips that spread across her mouth when she smiled. But she didn't smile too often, because she too often found herself in the middle of a field in Galveston, Texas. Now, I don't know if you guys have been to Texas, but that sun in Texas is sweltering hot. And the humidity is high. Charlotte said that she felt like she was being dangled over a pot of boiling water. It had been beaten into her that she would be in that field forever. Her grandfather was in that field. Her mama was born in that field. And she was in that field. She didn't think that she would ever see freedom. What was she doing there? Picking cotton. Now, picking cotton, as Lois said, is hard work. You gotta watch out for the cotton boils gonna prick your skin, make it bleed, and even cause infection. And because the sun was so hot, the sweat would pour out of her body like rivers of water, stain her clothes and causing her to smell. It would just run down over her eyes, and she felt like she was blind and could barely see. But after just a few months, her hand would move automatic-like from the cotton plant to the burlap bag that she had slung over her shoulder. Now, Charlotte had a vivid imagination. Her body was in that field, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. When she'd see the wiry-haired overseers ride on to the plantation with carriages full of new and young slaves in her mind, she would sneak up behind the overseers, snatch that whip right out of their hand, lasso the slaves back onto the carriages, and ride off on the other side of the ocean, never to be seen again. Other times, her imagination would pick her right up and place her right down, smack dab in the middle of the big house. And there she'd be, all dressed up like the missus, with a long dress, buttons down the middle, and a soft collar. And on her feet were shoes that came up just a little bit above her ankle. She'd sit down on that cushioned couch and pour herself some spiced tea out of those dainty cups with her black pinky fingers sticking out, refusing to join the other fingers. And then at night, she would sleep in a bed with sheets in a room with walls that protected her from the insects and the rats and the nightly visits from the master. But her favorite place to visit in her imagination was Santa Fe, Texas. And I don't know if you guys know that Santa Fe, Texas is the oldest capital in the United States. And she had heard tell from other slaves that there were buildings where you could go in, order the food that you want to eat, and someone else will cook it and bring it out to you. Well, Charlotte imagined herself on a horse that she named Freedom, bouncing up and down in the saddle with her hands in the air. And when she got to Santa Fe, she would burst through those batwing doors, order herself some collard greens with some fat, some whole cakes, and some juicy meat from a cow. But she was snapped back into reality by the crack of the master's whip. Get back to work, you dirty black beast. Yes, sir, master. Yes, sir, master. She cried, just to keep from being beaten again. Charlotte thought that she was stuck in that field, and to her it looked like dirt, it smelled like decay, and it had the bitter taste of the death of her dreams and the dreams of her generations. But there was this one day, and Charlotte called it a mighty fine, glorious day, because on that day, she heard the footsteps of over 2,000 soldiers marching to town, and that was over half the population, and most of them were black, just like her. And they looked majestic, all dressed up in those uniforms. There was white men and black men marching together, and there really didn't seem to be much difference between them. And then a white man named Major General Gordon Granger climbed up on the balcony, waved his hand to the crowds to silence them. Charlotte said that it was so quiet that you could hear a dog howl in the background. He took this document out of his pocket and began to read. Order number 3. According to Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation of 1863, all slaves are free. 1863? Charlotte thought. 1865 now. Today is... It's June 19th, 1865. For 2.5 years, she was living and working and thinking like a slave. Freedom came late, but it was better than not coming at all. Charlotte's body began to tingle and her heart was beating just as fast as a locomotive coming down the track. Uncontrollable tears of joy fell down her eyes when she realized that she wasn't a slave anymore. That was the day she stood up straight. She and the other slaves were jumping up and down. Former slaves were jumping up and down, and there were shouts of hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. They were dancing and singing and just crying out. You know what? It was a time of celebration. It was a time of acclamation. It was a time of jubilation. Charlotte didn't have to pretend to ride on a horse named Freedom anymore. She was free. One moment, she was a slave. And the next moment, she was a human being. Now, I wasn't there, obviously, but her blood runs through my veins.
Yeah.
And I believe that I can almost hear her say, I'm free! I'm free, huh? June 19th, 1865, my chains fell off, and I'm free! Whoa, freedom. Whoa, freedom. Whoa, freedom over me. Yeah. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
All right. We're having church up in here. And it is Sunday for sure. Sunday afternoon. All right. I want to tell you a little short story, a personal story, because freedom comes in so many forms. And when I was a teenager, I wanted to get my driver's license and I wanted a car. To me, that was freedom. Freedom of movement. Freedom of going from point A, point B, and I didn't have to wait for that old bus that never seemed to come. And so my father, he had a strong work ethic. And he said, "You want a car, boy?" I said, "Yeah, Daddy, I want a car rather, and it's gonna be my toy too, because I'm gonna play with it." And he had a cousin that had a junkyard down on Edmond Street in Bayview. And he said, "I tell you what, I got some work for you. I do some work on the weekends, polishing cars, detailing cars, let you make some money." And I had my eye on old Chevy down there, need a little work, and I'm sure old cuz will give it to me pretty cheap. And hope you get your license. He said, "But one thing you got to do, and that is you got to be your mother's personal chauffeur." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, because that'll free me. There's that word. He said, you got to take it to church. You got to take her to go make groceries. And you got to take her to her little clubs, the ladies' clubs, and all them organizations. My mom was a very busy, active person. And I said, damn, you got to pay for freedom. Freedom ain't free. And so I got the car. And I did my chauffeuring. And then what happened was that first New Year's Eve, my mother said, boy, you got to take me to church. I said, Mom, it's not Sunday. Why are you going to church on New Year's Eve? That year it was on a Tuesday. She said, because I got to go to watch meeting. I say, watch? I said, what are you going to watch for? She said, we're going to watch freedom come in. And I say, but Mama, we already free. What you got to watch for? She said, you just think you are. Say, we halfway there, but we ain't all the way there. And I complained bitterly. My father got word and he said, I hear you don't want to take your mama to church on New Year's Eve. I don't, no. I'm not taking Daddy. He said, if you don't, I'm going to take the car and your license. I say, I'll be there. Drop off and I'll pick her up on time. And so my mother went back to the church, Double Rock Baptist Church over there in Bayview, and she told the preacher, yeah, you know, these youngsters need to know a little something about watch night, because my boy here, he grumbling and growling about churches on Sunday. Why New Year's Eve? And so what happened when I took her to church that night, she said, you're going to stay through the service. Generally what I would do, I'd drop off at 8 o'clock and I'd go pick my buddies up and we'd go to some quick little parties, boom, 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 and they'd stay and I'd have to, 11 o'clock, I had to be back at the church house by 11:30. And so I missed all the New Year's stuff. But I ended that church on that Tuesday, New Year's. And I walked into the church. I thought I would just see a bunch of old sisters sitting up in there fanning and stuff. And a few of them, you know, reading the Bible. And it's going to be boring. I figured, well, I'll take a nap. But Rev walked in. And when I walked in, I saw there were a bunch of teenagers in there, my age. And I said, oh, this is cool. And that was Sharon over there, a girl I had a crush on. And I was saying, oh, it's going to be all right. I'm in good company. And so our preacher was Reverend Victor L. Medeiros, and he was from Texas, Galveston, Texas. And he got up to the podium after a bunch of singing and praise dancing and people testifying. And he said, we got some young folks here that don't understand the meaning of watch night. And I'm here to tell you that my grandfather was in Galveston, Texas, when this here general rolled up and signed and read that proclamation. And I got it firsthand from a primary source. And I'm going to preach tonight, but more important, I'm going to teach tonight. And he laid out a sermon that I will never, ever forget. And it was my first exposure to watch night. He said that in 1862, the black folks couldn't really think and believe that old Abe Lincoln was going to sign that proclamation on January 1, 1863. So they sent someone up to the telegraph office and said, there was a black newspaper from the freed town up there up north. Some freed slaves had a black newspaper and said, we are going to telegraph when freedom breaks out. And they did. They telegraphed. Abe has done it. He has signed that proclamation. And the bells started ringing throughout the churches. people started banging on kettles, and beating their fists and their body percussions and clanging bells, everything but a drum, because drums were forbidden. But a joyful noise went up. And he went on to say, and he was preaching and teaching in that rhythmic way, and he said, and then the people said, what does this freedom mean? Just like Lois was saying. And one old brother said, now, does it mean that we gonna sprout wings and fly away from here? You say, no, Brother John, that ain't gonna happen. He said, but what does it mean? What we gonna do? Ain't nobody gave us a memo on how to be free. He said, and an old wise man by the name of Brother Silas said, all right, y'all, gather around me. What we gonna do is, we ain't got no money, but what we do have is our labor. Sister Sadie, you're an herbalist, and you know how to heal people with them leaves and them herbs and them roots. You're gonna be our sister doctor, and you're gonna charge us a fee. You ain't gonna do it for free. And Brother Willis over there, you're an iron worker. These plantations, these farmers, they're gonna need some ironwork, some gates, some wrought iron window framing. That's your job. And we all know how to till the soil and raise food. And we have carpenters over here, brick makers over there. You can be paid for your labor. And I'm telling you folks, I must have been in the 10th grade. I'd had a bunch of history classes in California. I never heard of Juneteenth. And I'm saying, I'm getting an education right here in the church house on New Year's Eve. And my eyes were like this. And I saw my mother look over at me, and she started smiling, and she started nodding. And she knew I was getting it. And so, old Reb went on to talk about how the people developed a neighborhood, a community, and then, lo and behold, they had black towns. Prosperous. Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street. All over the South, people begin to bind themselves together, utilize their labor, and bought land, built houses, and they prospered. The people prospered. But one day, always there's a one day in the story. One day, old Jim Crow raised his ugly head. That was that white resistance. We cannot have these former slaves be as prosperous, and in some cases more prosperous than us white folks. We've got to push back. We've got to resist. So Jim Crow came into effect. Tried to strip away our freedom, boys and girls. That's why we have to keep watch. And that's why we watch each new year. Going out, we look at what kinds of little acts of unkindness and hatred has been chipping away at our freedom. And what must we do to hold it off? We need lawyers, we need doctors, we need engineers to fight this battle on all these fronts. And preacher was getting down. And then he pivoted. He said, now you know the his story and her story and what you need to do. And what I want to ask all of you boys and girls out there, what you gonna do with your freedom now? You got skills? We want you to apply them no matter what they are to maintain our freedom. And he ended on that note. It's on you to keep a watch on freedom, because freedom is never a constant, it never lasts forever. And there are always people trying to clip your freedom from you. And with with that, we marched on out to church. Oh, oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I be your slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. With that, we walked out to church. Me and my mom, she grabbed me by my arm. It was one of those cold San Francisco nights. It was 12:15, fireworks were going off. And you know what? I did not miss those parties at all. I had a history lesson in Double Rock Baptist Church. So we got in the car, we settled in, and I was still kind of dazed sitting there. My mom said, "Come on, boy, start this car. Get on up to the hill. Your daddy got a big old pot of gumbo and black-eyed peas and collard greens. I want me a midnight snack." Okay, Kurt, can you take us out with a short one? 10 minutes, bro.
We want the folks to get out of there. Sunshine.
A special request has been made. A short story. All right. I got like a 3-minute story. All right. But y'all gonna play with me now. How many of you know Brer Rabbit tales? All right. So you know Brer Rabbit is always trying to what? Trick somebody, right? Trick them animals out of their food and trick them out of their money and tricking them just to be tricking them. So once, Brer Rabbit, he had tricked Brer Wolf one too many times. And that Wolf said, "I'm gonna get that rabbit if it's the last thing I do." So he started chasing Brer Rabbit. And Brer Rabbit, he outran that wolf and finally got away. He came to this clearing, this big old opening, and in the middle of the opening, over yonder, he saw this big old elephant. And this elephant was up against a tree, scratching his, backside up against a tree. And Brer Rabbit was like, "Huh?" And then Brer Elephant took his big old trunk and he picked up some rocks and some branches and he threw them up in the air and let him land on his back like this. And Brer Rabbit was like, "What?" Finally, he couldn't stand anymore. He said, "Morning, Brer Elephant." Elephant said, "It's morning, but what's good about it? I got this itch that I just can't scratch." You know what that is. Right, you got this itch and you just can't reach it. Imagine being Brer Elephant. You can't scratch that itch. And Brer Elephant was like, oh no, scratch that itch or I'm gonna blow. So you got to help Brer Elephant out. Like I say, oh no, scratch that itch or I'm gonna blow.
Scratch that itch, I'm gonna blow.
And Brer Rabbit's like, "Yeah, Brer Elephant, I'll help you. I'll scratch your back." "Oh, you sure would be a good friend. Sure enough, would be a good friend, Brer Rabbit." So he picked up that rabbit with his big old trunk, he put him on his back, and Brer Rabbit was just about to scratch Brer Elephant's back when he said, "Brer Elephant, I need you to do something for me." "Oh, what's that? I'll do anything for you, Brer Rabbit. Just scratch my back. It's driving me crazy." "When I'm scratching your back, I need you to say, 'Oh no, Brer Rabbit, you killing me.'" You want me to say, "Oh no, Brer Rabbit, you kidding me?" "Uh-huh." All right. So Brer Rabbit starts scratching his back like this. His thick elephant skin. So help me out. Just let's have fun with it. Pretend like you scratching his back. Like he was, "Oh yeah. Oh." And Brer Elephant was loving it. Then he started like jumping up and down like this with his feet like. Do that with me. Like, oh yeah, he was, oh yeah. And then to make it even better, Brer Rabbit was like biting his thick elephant skin like. So let's do that. And Brer Elephant was loving it. He said, "Uh-huh. Oh yeah. A little to the left. Right there. to say, "Oh no, bro rabbit, you killing me." Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Oh no, bro rabbit, you killing me. And right at that moment, the wolf finally caught up with that rabbit. He saw him up there and said, "Ah, see here, brother rabbit. Now I finally got you right where I want you, and I'm going to get you." And Brother Rabbit looked down at that wolf. He didn't have no fear in his eyes at all. He looked down at Brother Wolf. He looked down at that elephant, and he started pouring it on. He was like scratching his back like this, real big. So help me out. Don't hit the person in front of you. Like scratching his back like this. Yeah, real big like that. And then he started like jumping. Down like that, and he was like, biting the elephant's skin. And bruh elephant, he was loving, but he remembered what Brother Rabbit said, and he said, "Oh no, Brother Rabbit, you killing me." And Brother Rabbit said, "And when I get done with you, Brother Elephant, I'm gonna get that wolf. He's been chasing me all day long, and I'm tired of it." And that wolf, when he heard that, his eyes got big. He tucked his tail between his legs. He turned himself around, and he got out of there. And that was the day that Brother Rabbit finally got away from Brother Wolf, and Brother Elephant, he made a new friend. Thank you.
Okay. That's it. Lois? Yes. Break out those red velvet cupcakes. That's yours. On the way out. On the way out, you can grab them. I like to see people up front here.
It's out there. You gotta go get it.
I like to get the storytellers up front here, and I want them to tell about what's coming next. You gotta go.
Thank you, Brother Ben.
Thank you. All right, Brother Kurt, what's coming up next?
You change your mind?
I got it now.
All right, what do I have coming up? I have
Okay, Ma, we trying to listen.
I just did 2 Juneteenth shows. Oh, I know. I'm working with a youth drama group, and we have a presentation coming up this weekend, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's not a Juneteenth one, it's a drama presentation. I'm really looking forward to that, so that's the next thing I have coming up. It's in Antioch. Yes.
Where's Camille? Come on up.
I guess I should have stood up because I don't really have
Everything.
But
Yeah, that was
so it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to the next time I get this opportunity. Thank you.
Yes, hello. Well, it's up to my brother Ben. If we can put this show on the road, we'll see what's happening. I'm always available.
Let's get a drummer song.
Yeah, I don't really have anything coming until September, so, but if you want to invite me to your house for dinner tonight.
Just make sure you got some soul food for her. Now, I'm a co-producer of What's Your Story? We're here every other month at the Monkey House. And so in July, we'll be having a story about fun in the sun. And I want to thank everybody around. And listen, folks, we've got storytelling royalty in the house. I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize Miss Diane Falah. Put your hand up, Diane. Diane is the godmother of storytelling. She tells stories around the world, literally around the world. Look her up on Facebook. Where else can they find you?
On Facebook, I'm on Facebook. Look at me.
Gotta look at that face. You can tell she's a storyteller already.
I'm on YouTube.
YouTube, look her up. Diane Falah, a graduate of Castlemont High School, East Oakland. Thank you so much. Get your red velvet cupcakes on the way out. And remember, tell your story And we have an announcement from Stagebridge. Eleanor.
Hello, everybody. I want to invite you next Sunday, June 29th. We have the Performing Arts Summer Cabaret, 1:30 to about 4:30 tomorrow afternoon at Stagebridge. That's the First Congregational Church of Oakland. At Stagebridge, you can get tickets at stagebridge.org or just walk in. It starts at 1:30 next Sunday. It's going to be a wonderful afternoon of storytelling and singing and improv and acting. It'll be just a lovely afternoon. And then in July 14th through 18th, there's a Performing Arts Summer Camp at Stagebridge. And on the way out, you can get a flyer and you can get a brochure that'll tell you all the 10 different classes, from musical theater to tap dancing to storytelling to acting. So many clowning. Lois? Lois? Yeah. So I hope to see you next Sunday and also in July at the summer camp.
All right. And one last announcement, and this is the last. The Storytelling Association of California also offers storytelling in the schools. We can do it on Zoom or in person, and it's absolutely free for Title I schools. So if you know any Title I schools that would be interested in having us send some of our very good storytellers out, let me know. There's information on the back table. Storytelling in the schools, and I could sing that song. Freedom is a happy song to them little school kids. Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. And keep telling your story. Don't be erased.